Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special episode. I am hosting a very good friend of mine today, Erich Midigo, who is joining me all the way from Kenya. And there's something we want to talk about that has been an issue, I would say, and maybe an area of interest for many young people, and that is the non-profit space. So, how do you navigate that space if you are a young person who is passionate about, starting your own nonprofit or joining an existing nonprofit? What's the funding landscape? How do you make your project sustainable? So who better than Eric to chat with us about this topic? So I'm really honored to welcome you, Eric, and please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Juma. It's a pleasure to see you. I think after around 2 or 3 years when we were last in Chicago during the IFT annual event. And that was actually a moment of what we are about to talk today, precedence of pitching and building in the nonprofit sector. So just like you've mentioned, my name is Erich Midigo. I'm from Kenya, and I have done most of my studies in South Africa after the undergraduate level, which I was in Maseno University. Then I crossed over to Nelson Mandela University as a Mandela Rhodes Scholar. And then later on, came back to Kenya, worked briefly, and then I got a chance to pursue a PhD at the University of Pretoria within the field of uh, nutrition and applications of that in biotechnology. So that is briefly about myself, and I'm happy to share with you my journey and my nonprofit organization that I started some years back.
You didn't say that you have pursued your PhD and you're now Dr. Midigo.
Yeah, so
Anyway,
yeah.
so there's a lot to talk about with you, especially your journey in Kenya and South Africa, winning multiple awards and scholarships, especially the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship. But I think today we'll just focus on your nonprofit, which is Ndalo Heritage Organization. So maybe just a bit about that vision. What did you have in mind, and what has your journey been towards starting it and running it successfully?
Yes, Juma. So this is at the core of my passion. So it's a bit of both growing up, seeing challenges that we face daily back in the rural areas, having grown up as a son of in a surrounding of peasant farmers and raised up by peasant farmers, but also what you see when you delve deeper into the field of nutrition, maternal, infant, and young child health. Basically, that's been my background from master's level. The vision was to address issues around malnutrition and specifically micronutrient malnutrition within during the first 1,000 days of life. What I mean by first 1,000 days of life is from conception to the second birthday of a child. So this period, there's a lot of changes and development that takes place. And if it is not reversed early enough, then it proceeds long term and it affects both cognitive development of the child and generally the overall health and well-being of this child as an adult. So in terms of productivity has been the vision, but over time we brought on board other aspects that were very much interlinked. When we talk about the first 1,000 days of life in nutrition, then you will also talk about the first 1,000 days of life of a plant because nutrition is as good as the soil and the source. So, the source of this food. And that's why now in my organization, I'm also addressing a concept that we call feed the soil to feed the future through regenerative organic farming. Yes.
So those are a lot of technical concepts, maybe way too technical for someone without a nutrition background, but we get the gist of it. There's 1,000 days of the child. What would you say were some of the issues you were trying to solve, especially focusing on those first 1,000 days?
Yes. So at the core of it is issues around wasting, issues around stunting. So stunting, a stunted child is a child who is too short for the age, and it's a manifestation of chronic malnutrition, undernutrition. So most of the time, these children, as you might remember when you're growing up, maybe you are being fed porridge, and then maybe the mother or grandmother is forcing this porridge by force. I mean, that you swallow the porridge. And most of this, you find a child resisting and or protesting the whole process and crying. But ideally, the porridges are not bad. The only problem is that they, especially when it is monotonous, it's like the in thing, the what you consume on Monday, maybe to Friday, and you don't have diversity of diet because perhaps it's the resources. These families are strained. They cannot buy maybe animal sources of protein. So they rely on plant sources of food and mostly cereals. It's either maize porridge, sorghum porridge, cassava porridge, and that trajectory. So then when this child consumes this porridge, most of the time they get the stomach is full, but they're not getting the nutrients. And I began asking myself a question that how can we then transform the foods that these families, which are mostly rural poor families, consume into more nutritious, affordable, and tasty foods. So that's really the dream behind what we do. And we decided to come up with an idea of what we call food to food fortification using local resources. So local resources, I'll give you an example. If we are trying to address issues around iron deficiency anemia. Actually, iron deficiency anemia is the leading cause of child mortality and morbidity. Is sicknesses related to children and even deaths and complication, mostly for the child and even the mother, because when you're talking about the first 1,000 days of life, it's, also the mother is involved. So issues around iron deficiency anemia, zinc, which it plays a very key role in brain development of a child. Issues also around vitamin A. If you're in Kenya or most of our African countries, you will see something called a government program that they call Malezi Bora Weeks. So during this Malezi Bora, there is a supplementation of vitamin A. Now we wanted to now fill this gap in using local resources and also foods that are already being consumed within these households. So based on now having studied the science of food, applications of biotechnology in nutrition, and green chemistry techniques, but leaving the complex science in the lab, how do you then translate this into very simple, adapted ways that a family can practice to improve the nutrition value of these staple foods? So I'll just give you one example: is that improving maybe iron content of these cereals or this porridge. We simply understood that you can take vegetable, indigenous vegetable, like maybe amaranth, which is very high in iron, and add it to in the right proportion anyway to a cereal like maize or sorghum porridge, and you've improving the iron intake for this child or this mother. And the same thing for vitamin A. We already have these foods, but people are not integrating them into the daily diets in the right amounts to improve nutrients intake. So vitamin A, for example, the orange flesh sweet potato, very rich in vitamin A. So these are just simple ways that we process and add value to some of these staple foods in these families. Yes.
So now you have an idea, brilliant idea. Usually young people have some idea about what is supposed to be done. You've identified a problem, and the issue now is the solution part of it. So you have an idea to solve these various malnutrition issues for kids under 3 years. How then do you transform this idea into a solution? And for you, if I'm not wrong, that was through establishing Ndalo. So just maybe walk us through how then that journey was for you from the idea phase to now implementation phase.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Ndalo is now around 5 years old, and the idea was there. The problem was there, which we have identified in the community, which basically was around malnutrition, and the solution was targeting value addition. So then how do you move from the idea to actual implementation, what I call from head to hands? How do you move from head to hands? Um, I will give you my own story. Maybe that will be more relatable. At this point, I was just completing my master's degree, and I had a conversation, and this also bring to me the essence of networking. So I had a conversation with one of my neighbors, as an international student, and she was more elderly, Dutch, Dr. Barbara. Big up wherever you are. I know you'll be able to watch this podcast. So Dr. Barbara was winding up her PhD program. So we had a conversation one evening about how can we then translate our research disciplines program to help our communities, and more so Africa that needs a lot of these interventions. So she's having a background in commerce and business development, and then my background is in this other side of nutrition and public health interventions. So the first step was to build a team. And I think most of the challenges for young people is, when you want to establish an organization or a program, we think about resources first. Resources follow the team, the right team, and the right idea. So I came up with a team. So it was through networking, Barbara volunteering to serve in the board, and then through Barbara again, because she believed in the vision, in the idea, she introduced me to a other friend who was a professor at the University of Cape Town. And it is very much important for us, especially young people, to also learn or collaborate with people who are more experienced or more elderly. They know the ropes. They've walked this journey, so they can show you where to go or what not to do. So these people brought, cumulatively over 50 years of experience that I did not have because I was just graduating from my master's degree. And then my mandate was to go back to Kenya and register this now as a legal entity. So there are all these processes when you want to register an organization. I started it as a CBO before then later on upgrading to an NGO. So as a CBO, it's based in the context of Kenya. You'll go to the Department of Social Work. They will give you what you need, maybe constitution, minutes, and all that. And then you have a legal entity. So with a legal entity, then you can now operate. Beginning as a CBO worked for me because it's always good to start small and build your niche. But again, talking of niche, you can normally it's good to be known for something. So you can't address everything. And it for people who are thinking around starting the organization, start thinking around the sustainable development goals. For me, I identified myself with SDG 2, which is zero hunger, and SDG 3, which is on health and wellness, because the two are interlinked, what I call two sides of the same coin. So that is one very important thing that you need to do. And then at the start, before you get resources, it is good to have a team that can volunteer. I saw you doing a fundraiser recently, which I want to congratulate you for. Yeah, but you see,
Thank you.
people believing in a good cause will not mind committing their resources or time to build it, to work with you. So that is one thing. And also, it's also very much important to have a strong reputation, to be accountable and be credible as the founder, as a vision bearer. Because once people start doubting your credibility, they might not work with you that journey. So that's part of leadership. And yeah, so that's how I moved through my journey. And then now started now doing grant writing, winning some grants. And I believe maybe we'll talk about this more later, but also now evolving beyond grants now to look at areas around sustainability. Grants are good just to kick us or get us started, but then you'll have to figure out how to move on. Yeah, by generating your own revenue.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Kudos to Dr. Barbara, wherever you are. And Alo is doing really well. Just something that started with a vision, and now look at you guys. So congrats on that achievement. You talked about a lot of things that maybe we may not have time to unpack all of them. First of all, you said if someone wants to start, first of all, can you make a distinction between a community-based organization and a non-profit? Are the two different? And also a social enterprise. And
Yeah.
are they different? What are they different in terms of registration or scope? So what makes them different?
Yeah, of course, they're different. In terms of registration, in for the community-based organization, you do it within the specific sub-county. So I'm talking that maybe for the Kenyan audience. So if, for example, you come from Kisumu, then you go to the Department of Social Development in maybe Kisumu Central, Kisumu West, or wherever. And then you have to register it within that specific community. That's why I think they emphasize on the aspect of community-based organization. Your operations are also limited and within a smaller scope. So you cannot perhaps go and do a project in a different county unless you are partnering. So that is one distinction. An NGO is more national. So you do register with the NGO Coordination Board. I think nowadays they have changed the name, but the NGO Coordination Board, then the requirements to register the NGO almost the same. You need a constitution, you need a board. For a CBO, you really don't need a board. You just need officials. Yeah, for the NGO, then you need the board of governance or board of management. And then NGO also has, you will be told to prioritize maybe 5 main counties that you'll be working in. So it's you perhaps think about, in our context, our primary counties of operation are Nakuru, Kisumu, and the western side of Kenya. So that's why social enterprise could be a limited liability company. So that is registered through the e-citizen, and it's you're allowed, it gives you leverage to make profit, so you can still do your not-for-profit work but still go commercial. Yeah, so that one distinction for between the social enterprise and an NGO.
And just on that, talking about tax, if you're making a profit, I know we will talk about sustainability for a non-profit or a community-based organization who is also running an income-generating activity. What are some of the tax implications of that?
Yeah,
Do they
so
have to pay?
actually for a community-based organization and even NGO, you are not supposed to pay tax. So regarding the taxes, the CBO you can file nil returns. So you don't have to, because you are not into business basically. Same to NGO, although with an NGO, if you have employees, like in my case, then they pay taxes. They pay as you earn like any other employee. But then the organization is exempt from taxes. And then for the social enterprise, then of course you have to pay taxes because you are into profit. But one thing that I've also realized over time is that the fact that you are an NGO doesn't mean that your operations then entirely you cannot make profit. What it simply means is that profit making is not your core business. And the profit that you make are reinvested into the organization for community work or
Mm.
social impact. Yeah.
So you can make that argument to the tax person.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, if maybe we are selling fortified foods, then the money that comes from it is reinvested back in the organization for training farmers or supporting them with incentives like certified seeds and things
Mm-hmm.
things along that line. So yeah.
Yeah. And you also talked about leadership. I said there was a lot to unpack, but I'll try to get to a few. So, for someone who is trying to build a team and start or continue the operations of an organization, what would you say are the top 3 skills they need to have?
Yeah, I think effective communication is very important as a leader. You need to know how to communicate clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And then integrity or accountability is very key, because trust is something that you earn. You don't ask for it, and you earn it by being an example. So we talk about communication skills. Then also in this field of what we do, it's very much important that for me you carry authenticity. So I mean, when someone wants to talk about Juma, what will they say? Yeah, so there are those values that you stand for, and sometimes also embracing difficult conversations is very key. I love this book by Brene Brown that I will maybe recommend for anyone that wants to venture into this space. The book is titled Dare to Lead. And Brene Brown says that brings a very important concept about vulnerability. That vulnerability is not a weakness, but it is a strength. And to be vulnerable is to accept we are human and to show up as a leader, also accepting responsibility where maybe you made a mistake. So
Hmm.
not all the time showing as that um, perfect figure in the organization. So that's because we are dealing with human beings. So then people can relate, can feel more free with you. They can open up, see people beyond the fact that they are employees, and see a mother, see a parent, see a caregiver, and just listen also into their stories and their challenges. That is one key thing I would say.
Yeah, that's good. In terms of, so you are you have a vision. Now we are moving forward with implementation. Let's assume you have the skills you've talked about. You are building a team. The next thing I would want to know is what are some of the systems you have to put in place to make sure your nonprofit is well oiled to continue operations seamlessly.
Yeah, the first thing you need to have is structures, like you need to have an organogram. So there needs to be clarity. And this is something that even funders ask for. You need to know what are the roles of the board of management? What are the roles of you as a founder? Are you engaging? Are you the CEO or are you employing a CEO as you're growing? And what are the roles of the senior management and all the employees? That clearly has to come out. And then the organization needs to have policies. When you start attracting big funding, they will want to know, do you have procurement policies? What are finance policies? What are policies around gender issues? How do you handle discrimination and things like that? So as an organization, you have to work maybe with a legal expert and develop those key important policies. If you are dealing with children, what are child protection policies that you have? And it brings more credibility to the organization. The organization also needs to identify itself with core values. What do you stand for as an organization? Is teamwork something that you value? Professionalism? And then it has to be inculcated into your daily activity. I think moving forward, then I think also then you approach this different. That there are so many funders that are interested in programs along these specific sustainable development goals. So that's why I said identifying your niche and targeting specifically those funders. You can have a resource mobilization unit that specifically scouts and finds relevant funding opportunities, then that you can work around. And it's also very much important right now to learn the power of collaboration. So you can't do everything. And I think when you are implementing bigger projects, then, like for example, I'll give you one of the projects that we are going to be implementing this year. We are taking the approach of a public-private partnership where we are bringing on board universities like Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University is now one of our key partners because they have different mandate and expertise. They are perhaps stronger in research and training, and the NGO is maybe stronger in community linkage, monitoring, and evaluation of programs. So that is very much important that you embrace collaboration as you grow and attract more funding and sustainability. And also working closely with government is very much important because they are the custodian basically of development plans. And mostly even funders will want to see that your projects or programs align to the priorities of the government. And in the long term, the government can take, like you can develop policy briefs that the government can then integrate into their development plans and implement post the project cycle.
So yeah, that's good to know for those of you who are into the nonprofit space. Structures are very important. Like you will sleep at night soundly when you know that you have things running smoothly as they should, and just put it down as Eric advised on paper as a policy and have it, signed so that if whether it's HR policy, financial policy, so that things are happening as they should be, even in your absence. There's this something about the founders, Eric, that founders feel really attached to the organization and they want to do everything. I get it at the beginning because of probably their resource constraint. But what's your take on that? And I think it also fits into just having structures in place even before you have funding.
Yeah, yeah, you rightly say. And actually, I was just reminded when you were talking, I remembered you have an expertise in policies, issues around policies. So when you were talking, that just rose to my mind. And I believe our viewers will really benefit from that reflection. Yeah, so founders having strong attachment to the organization and wanting to do everything. This is really indeed it's a problem. And I think at the start you might perhaps have no choice or limited choice. You have not employed maybe an accountant, so you want to be the accountant, but of course you will not be an expert. You can't be a jack of all trades. So it's always very much important to trust people to help you. Like I said, at the initial stages when you are not able to pay them, there are people who still believe in volunteering and they believe in growing together as long as you have demonstrated values such as accountability and honesty. Just sticking to what you can do best. If it is resource mobilization or grant writing or fundraising, stick to that and then find someone who can help you with other aspects like monitoring and evaluation, someone that can manage your social media and website. You will realize that then you are tapping into different strengths and you have stronger visibility and you are even growing and you even relieve yourself of fatigue, what we call founders burnout. So
Mhm.
that's what I would recommend.
Yeah. And you already talked a bit about this as well, but this is a common issue, the elephant in the room, so to speak, in every organization, be it government, nonprofit, country, is the issue of finance and funding. So, how have you and Dalo been able to operate for 5 years now? And I know you mentioned, at the beginning, there's a few struggles, but then how do an organization that's just starting, what are some of the key lessons you've learned to enable them to seek for and get funding and keep operating? And in the absence of funding, how can they adapt and maybe readjust their strategies to continue operating?
Yeah, so when you are beginning, it is good to target seed funds, seed funding. Seed funding, most of the time, they go below 50,000 US dollars. Some will give you like 10,000, 25,000 because, again, you have not the institutional capacity to manage maybe bigger funding is not you've not demonstrated it. So seed funds are a bit easier. They are what we call low hanging fruit. But even with those seed funding, you need to use them well and make sure you have audited statements, financial statement, independently audited that you can show when you are seeking bigger funding. But again, beyond as you are growing and getting, especially grants, it's always important to start thinking about what can generate income without funding, like what happens when you don't have funding. So I'll give you just two examples. Recently, we got some funding or support from the Engineers Without Borders and Missouri University for the water project. I think maybe you saw it in our LinkedIn update. When you do this water project, it is for the benefit of the community and for the benefit of the school. However, the system will itself need maintenance. In an area that is arid and semi-arid, like for where we install this project, the school was spending like 50,000 Kenya shillings per day to buy water. So imagine you helping them address that kind of expenditure. What we've done then is that you can charge some small money if the vendors locally are maybe selling 20 liters of water at 10 shillings, you can sell it at less, like maybe half, like 5 shillings or even 3 shillings. It's just some small money for sustenance. But the thing that you'll realize that, especially when it's quality, you will have bigger numbers turning up, showing up to buy that water. So then you have some extra revenues that can help you run other programs for the organization. The other bit also for us, maybe who are into these fortified foods, one of the things that now we are going to launch in the market is to commercialize, like have a fortified flour, that can then be sold. But then your prices, because profit making is not your core business, so your prices have to be competitive, slightly lower, or at match the market price, despite the fact that you have higher value. But then you also want, I think there are different models in business. There is what those who are experts in business call differentiation strategy, low cost strategy, and so for hybrid strategy. But what I think works when you are targeting the masses is to be a low cost producer, and especially if you are in an NGO world where profit is not your core business. So that's one way to complement grants. And even what I can tell you from experience is that most funders are happy to invest in a project that has a way that it's generating its own money, that has an income generating avenue beyond just the grant.
Yeah. So, do you have in mind any foundations or websites, or I know you can send them to me later to have in the description box, but where do people look for funding, people who are just starting off?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of information outside there is overwhelming. There is a lot of funding. Actually, sometimes you get so much that you don't even know which one to go for. So I can say confidently, there's so many organizations that, I'll give you example, Ford Foundation, interested
Yeah.
in supporting projects. It just depends on what you're dealing with. You're dealing with social justice, you're dealing with leadership, you're dealing with agriculture. We talk about Seeding the Future Foundation that myself and you participated in the United States. You talk about Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You talk about Grand Challenges Canada. You talk about, I mean, there are so many. And
Mm.
one good place that I can advise young people or people who are just starting to build the organization to spend your time on is on LinkedIn, because you will find people who even share grant opportunities, application or links on LinkedIn that then you can simply tap or just follow that person. Some people consistently share a lot of these grant opportunities.
Now, just as we conclude now, I have maybe two more questions, one or two more. The issue that is persistent with nonprofits is sustainability. I know we've talked so much about it, but what one or two ways would you recommend nonprofits or community-based organizations to be sustainable?
Yeah, one way to be sustainable is to make sure you are using local resources that are cost effective or cheap, because
Hmm.
when something can be affordable, can be acquired locally and cheaply, then it means then the continuity of whatever you are developing or building is perhaps guaranteed. So that is one. Two, it is very much important to work with and engage the communities from the word go when you're building a project or a program. If it is the farmers that you want to support, engage them from the first step as part of needs assessment. They will tell you their challenges. It will have the buy-in from these farmers or these groups of people, beneficiaries. And with that, then your project, even when you're rolling it out, they are part and parcel of it. Many a times people come with top-down approaches, and then you hear that, all right, so this is a project of this and that NGO. They don't feel part of it. But when they're involved, then they are part and parcel of it. That is
Hmm.
very much important. So, and also capacity building, this is sort of kind of an incentive, knowledge transfer. So as you are engaging these people, are they just a means to an end, or are you impacting or improving their livelihoods? Are you transferring some knowledge to them? Very important. And then lastly, because we already mentioned aspect around generating your own revenues, lastly, it's what I also mentioned on collaboration. It's very much important, especially with the government as well, both maybe the county and the national government. So with collaboration, you are influencing policy, but you are also
Yeah.
influencing budget allocation. So even when you have exited as an NGO, maybe you are implementing a project in Nairobi and you've left, the county government, if it's a feeding program, can carry on with that and still benefit the same beneficiaries.
Yeah. As we conclude, your takeaway on the biggest mistakes to avoid for someone who is just in that phase of establishing either community-based organization, non-profit, what should they avoid, or perhaps what should they focus on? So you
Yeah,
can go either way.
that's a very interesting question. I think self-doubt or imposter syndrome, we always want to do something, but there's always a voice inside us that maybe tells you are not good enough. It's competitive. There are so many organizations already doing gender issues, those kind of things. I believe that self-doubt is it's one of the biggest challenges that makes people not to achieve what they have set for. So you are working on that, and also resilience. It's not easy,
Mhm.
There are moments that you will even walk alone. I am a fan of Liverpool, so they say you will you will never walk alone. But many a times as a founder, you will walk alone. The team that you are probably assemble might at some point distance themselves or grow fatigue. So it is very much important that you believe in yourself and believe in that vision and carry with you resilience. So with that, you will definitely crack it.
What's your parting shot
My
for
parting
everyone now, not only for the founders, but everyone watching right now?
Yeah. So my parting shot for everyone watching is that we make progress by when you are facing uncharted path, you only identify the path by walking through it. So just take the first step. Things might look very unclear and uncertain, but one step at a time. And it's also very much important also to trust God in all this. So for those who believe in God anyway, it's important to trust God and pray over it, because there's a scripture that says that when the city is not built by God or involving God, then the builders do it in vain. So that will be my parting shot.
Well, guys, you heard it here first. Believe in God and just take the first step. The rest will take care of themselves and God will guide you through the journey. So thank you so much, Eric, for spending your night speaking with us, dispensing knowledge carelessly, like we usually say. And anyone out there who has a vision that they want to see through and start a nonprofit organization, all it takes is just an idea. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me and I will direct you to Eric, and connect with Eric also on LinkedIn. It's the same, Erich Midigo, and connect with Ndalo Heritage Organization. Also, I believe is in LinkedIn and across other social media platforms. Thank you, guys. If this was helpful, please pass it to someone who you think can benefit from it. Subscribe, share, and also like to support us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.